Alexithymia is a condition where somebody is completely unable to feel, identify emotions, both within themselves and with others. So if our partner has alexithymia and we're ill, distressed, upset, it isn't seen by them. We might be happy, ecstatic, verbalizing something with movement, and again, the person wouldn't recognize what's going on with us.
Hello, Cassandra Sister here. This is Diana, and I am with the wonderful Deborah Lawrence today. Hello, how are you? It's so good to see you.
Hello, Diane. It's lovely to see you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. I really appreciate it.
I'm so honored. You have meetup groups for Cassandras. You're just doing it and helping us so much. And my first question to you is, how did you find out about Cassandra? And just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Very good question. Obviously, it's a term that not many people are familiar with even now. So going back 10 years ago, when I was married to my husband on the autistic spectrum, like all Cassandras, I was having difficulty in the relationship. So I was doing the work, trying to work out who he was, what he was about, where he fitted on the spectrum. And one of the things I did was read one of Maxine Aston's book, and she had the term Cassandra Syndrome. It was just like a light bulb moment, Diana. It was describing exactly how I felt, what was going on. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's other people that feel the same as me. It's a recognized thing and it's got a name. That just amazed me. And so my work, after I realized that as an older husband, he could never change and was very much on the dark side of the spectrum, shall we say. So after a short marriage, there was a very long divorce. So I've been divorced 3 years now, which I have recovered as much as I can. And it's a very different story on the other side, I'm happy to say. But to find out that there were other Cassandras was such a revelation, because one of the things, as a lot of people are aware, is one of the hardest things that Cassandras struggle with is the loneliness, not only within the marriage, but also with people on the outside that don't understand. So I've been a therapist for 25 years when I married, 35 years now. I made it a bit of a mission to be able to help other Cassandras, as I'd got that professional background that was able to help. There's 4 of us that run the Cassandra Support Group UK, and we have the support network there so that other UK Cassandras can join the group, get support, and meet up with each other. So we encourage meetups so that people haven't got that isolation. So that's what for the last 4 or 5 years now.
Wow, that's wonderful. Because a lot of times you leave the marriage, you just want to leave it all. So it's so wonderful that you're still continuing to help and your years with the knowledge you have with therapy. And you are what type of therapist?
I'm a kinesiologist and a counsellor. So I do the talking therapy with the somatic body work as well. So that's my background. I've had my private clinic for 35 years now, so which has been a part of the dichotomy of being Cassandra, because it's almost like, well, if you're a therapist, how could you be? How could you fall for it? But of course, I was a subject that was an easy target for somebody. It did give me a lot of tools for the healing. That's a lot of the things I share in clinic when I'm working with Cassandra clients. But there's a lot of talking. You have to do a lot of the talking, a lot of the unloading, a lot of getting rid of the experiences and trauma. That's a very important starting point, I find. And then after quite a bit of time, when there's a regulation of the nervous system, then we can do a lot of the somatic work. We could do work to begin with, but people usually need to express and talk before.
Notice that with myself, it comes from the trauma of it. And that's why you become a Cassandra and you want people to understand so badly because you're trying to get it out of your system to heal. And you did mention you Aston.
Maxine Aston, a British lady that's done a lot of research and books on divergent relationships. And she was the lady that coined Cassandra Syndrome.
Oh,
People recognize it as ongoing traumatic relationship syndrome, which sums it up for a lot of people. They can understand that terminology. But she took it a step further where you try and explain to people and they don't get it, they don't understand it, including a lot of therapists. Being a therapist myself, I work a lot with therapist groups and psychotherapists, and I do a lot of lecturing and trying to spread the word of Cassandra syndrome because some therapists can make our situation so much worse. You know, if they understand it, as I experienced when I was married. We tried to find therapists, and although it sometimes helped him because the therapist was saying, treat him like a child. You know, it didn't help me when I was going, he's not my child, I'm expecting a husband. You know, so,
exactly.
So yeah, the therapy side of things is a very big subject to cover.
Yeah. You mentioned that you were a prime target because you were a therapist, and you mentioned about the dark side of autism. I'd like you to give us more info on that.
We know that autism is a spectrum. I look at relationships and realize that wounded children need healing. And when I was doing my deep work, I realized that I was attracting unavailable emotional people because my mother is on the autistic spectrum and she has a lot of similar traits to my autistic husband. He was very much further down the spectrum on the darker side, whereas my mother had alexithymia and a lot of personality traits. He had them maximized 10 degrees. So when I realized at the end of the marriage, I really wasn't safe, not just psychologically, but financially and physically. And at that point, he'd become a criminal. So there was activity to keep me safe from his harm. It was one of the psychiatrists that explained to me that he was on the dark triad, which I wasn't aware of. And it meant that not only was he autistic, he also was narcissistic and psychopathic, which is a term called the dark triad and makes up the criminal mind. I was so fortunate that the police and the courts knew I wasn't safe, and they supported me a great deal to end the marriage and get out and keep me safe. So, those Cassandras, we turn our heads inside out trying to work out who this person is. I can say just autism, but just because there's all the that go with it. So we're looking at the oppositional defiance, we're looking at the pathological demand avoidance, we're looking at the alexithymia, we're looking at a whole range of things, and we become the experts. But the important thing is we become the experts of them before we become the experts of ourselves. And it's that part of the Cassandra journey that I feel my part is within, because if people are trying to work out their relationships, we can do that hopefully to a degree, because not all relationships that are neurodiverse end up with Cassandra syndrome. Some people in neurodiverse relationships do have successful relationships. I work mainly with the people that know that they have to get out. The older women, while the Cassandra partner might be involved with still young children, other family members, things that are almost distracting. So give a purpose to that person. But when the relationship is older and it is just older neurodiverse people in the relationship, that's when I witness a lot of distress. And I witnessed it myself with my parents' marriage. great marriage. My father was very supportive, adored my mum, but when he was very ill in his last few years, my mother's mind blindness and alexithymia didn't recognize even when he was dying. We had to step in as a family, and it was a big shock to us that she hadn't got that level of care and
Right.
noticing. And so I do work with Cassandras and say to them, has your partner got that capacity to be aware? If you're suffering, if you're incapacitated, if you're the one that's in need, what's your plan? We do a lot of planning for those sort of scenarios, and sometimes it leads to divorce, sometimes it leads to solicitors getting involved for safeguarding and things like that. So there's a big complexity about this. And of course, we're in the window where we're with older partners that we recognize as autistic, whereas, of course, previously it wasn't a term that was even recognized. My mother would never have been diagnosed.
Right. Right.
So, and our children are being diagnosed. So we're literally in a Cassandra window, I think, whereas the ones that are isolated and need the help and help from professionals that probably don't get it. So
right. With Maxine Aston being the first pioneer in this, I always say how we're the pioneers in this, where we're figuring it out. And it's like you said, a window, because now the children are getting diagnosed. Now there's a name for it. And I always keep thinking there's more tools where hopefully the syndrome at one point will die out, where we actually put that in the diagnostics, that they're in the dark side you're talking about, where autistic people aren't exempt from personality disorders. And you did say a term, alexithymia. Could you say what that is? Because we know a lot about the blindness with autism. We know, what is the
alexithymia
alexithymia?
is very often seen with people that are on the autistic spectrum, but not necessarily. It might be alexithymia in itself. Alexithymia is a condition where somebody is completely unable to feel, identify emotions, both within themselves and with others. So if our partner has alexithymia and we're ill, distressed, upset, it isn't seen by them. We might be happy, ecstatic, verbalizing something with movement, and again, the person wouldn't recognize what's going on with us. I know that's typical of my mother and typical of my ex-husband, so you don't get it.
Yeah. And I feel that with mine as well, with the alexithymia. And I just learned about it not too long ago, and hearing from you that it could be with the autism or even be without the autism. Because people, we're always saying how autistic people have emotions, they just don't really know how to process it correctly or understand it. But with alexithymia and autism, it kind of like a double whammy, right? Because the reason I was detached so much from my guy is after my hysterectomy, when he just couldn't take care of me at all. And then I realized, it dawned on me, it takes so long for us to get it because we just don't see the world like that. So we don't understand it. And then I got COVID on top of the hysterectomy. I was so sick and he just wasn't there. He couldn't handle it at all. I realized in my old age, I need to find a community. I need to find, because I don't have children either. And I thought, he will not be there to take care of me at
Because
all.
this it is so complex because some people think, oh, it's just a lack of empathy, but
Yeah.
actually, it isn't just that.
No.
It's more complex.
And then people who don't live it or even experience it at all, it's just going to go whew,
Absolutely.
over their head.
And when we talk about adult autism, it's this window where it's difficult. When my ex-husband, we were going on the trail for his diagnosis, the very first doctor that we saw just looked at us with utter surprise and said, "What do you mean adult autism?" you only see that in children. And it's almost like, oh dear,
They grow up.
we've got a long route to go on this one.
Yeah, that was your first therapist. And so
Yeah.
what happened with that?
Well, then it was
I mean,
explained,
obviously,
don't just grow out of it.
no.
Lots of educating with professionals as we've gone along. So,
Oh my
and
gosh.
the professionals I wish I could work a lot more with because it would help Cassandra's that are needing to get out is solicitors and lawyers and people in the divorce system.
Yes.
The divorces I hear about are just excruciating because
Yes.
of the whole nature of divorcing somebody with autism. It just gets so long-winded and so expensive, and yeah, it's very difficult to.
I've heard such horror stories, and I'm so glad you mentioned that because I think it's part of my biggest push for my next book with
Yeah,
the
right,
focus on Cassandra Syndrome and how I'm so blessed. I'm so happy to have your story in the
yeah,
book. If it can ever get done, it's almost done. It's almost published. But
yeah.
it's one of the biggest things because I have friends. There's probably about 70% of the women whose stories were in my first book have divorced. And the
Mhm.
horror stories of the divorce and the solicitors, like you said, or the lawyers and attorneys or judges, they don't understand the autism. And when we're trying to protect our children, when we know that there might be alexithymia involved and our children suffer that neglect, there's no way to explain it to the court that I really need more care with my children.
There's a lot of relationships where the women feel they cannot divorce. Divorce isn't an
Yep.
option when there
Right.
are these children because they realize that their partner hasn't got the capacity to father individually.
Yes.
Your mothers have to make that decision to stay, and it's a very toxic family environment that they're aware of, but
Mhm.
safeguard their children, it's a decision they have to make to stay. And when you're trying to explain that to people, again, it's an area that people don't get it. The complexities that probably the children are on the autistic spectrum as well,
Yeah.
needs themselves. And the mothers are very often the only people that can actually be the carers in that situation, looking to services to support the mums, which a lot of the support finances are being cut in our country. So again, it makes things more tight and more difficult and has to be a contributing factor for women deciding what they do in these circumstances.
Right.
A lot of people end up very ill, as we know, goes along with Cassandra syndrome. So, yeah, it's a difficult one for people to understand. And, a lot of professionals are not looking at our sort of relationships. They're looking at childhood autism, thank goodness. The
Yes.
services are putting in place measures for autistic patients or clients, thank goodness. But the actual partners that are coping, there's very few resources. So
Yeah.
again, it's our voice that needs to be heard, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sucks being the first. It sucks being in this window.
Yeah,
One of the things I thought about when you're talking about there is the word narcissism. Anywhere you go, people understand what narcissism is. So I hear a lot from Cassandras that they're trying to divorce. They don't even say autism. They
mm,
just say narcissism
yeah,
because people understand that. The tragedy of that is there is another aspect where we don't want to put down or villainize our husbands who have
yeah.
autism, but we have to by saying they're
Yeah. And
narcissistic.
when you read a lot of the research, ongoing traumatic relationships, it is looking at people that are getting out of relationships with psychopaths and narcissists. But we read autism into it if it's applicable to us and our partner's behavior. And of course, the double whammy is, if you are a mum with children on the spectrum, when we're trying to explain about our husband's behavior, we're mindful that we're also talking about our children's behavior.
Exactly.
So we want to protect them, but we need the protection as well, and it's very complex again.
Yes. Yes. And that's
Yeah.
why it is. That's one of the main things is for solicitors, for judges, for just all around the world to understand it. So we can protect our children and also protect our children in a loving way too, because, like you said, we have to villainize them in order to get support, it feels like. Then I don't even know the words because it is so complex. Um,
We take on this work, Diana, and we're not the experts of experts.
exactly.
We've got so many things to. We're not
Well,
aware.
you said something about how we are working on them. And this was just brilliant when you said this because I have been focused on him for so long and writing my books and trying to figure him out and trying to this and trying to get people to understand and therapists to understand. I've been to 5 different therapists. You go through these years and years and years and you
Absolutely.
forget who you are.
Yeah, you
So
go down
I
this.
finally am working on myself and it's mind blowing what the thing is. I do feel I've learned a lot from him. I've definitely learned a lot about psychology and about everything that has helped me along the way, but I haven't really focused on me and healing
And
until now, until even starting this channel. And just recently it's mind-blowing.
the way it goes because we're probably brought up to be our trauma response is fawning. So we look outside of ourselves and rescue and people please and do the
Mhm.
help, putting it under our umbrella of kindness. Because when you meet Cassandras, they're very capable, articulate,
Yep.
human, wonderful women.
Right.
So we have these skills and we put it out to other people. But then when we don't receive it back, as we didn't do as children, and that's a lot of hard digging sometimes to find that. We
Yes.
realize that actually we are angry, and my goodness, there's no anger like a Cassandra's volcanic anger when they meet it. And it's underneath our fawning is that anger, is that rejection, is that unworthiness. And this is a hard part for a lot of us to actually reach because it's a part of us that's dark and we don't like it as much as a lot
Mhm.
of us don't like their dark side. But it's in us, and we have
Yeah.
to
I'm
meet it.
so glad you said about anger. I go to this wonderful acupuncturist. It's been really helping. And she said, "You're angry. Are you angry?" I said, "No." Then I thought about it. No, I am kind of angry. I'm very angry. And just trying to even understand the word anger. Like, yeah, I don't want to see that part in me because I have always been this loving. I lived in a Buddhist monastery for 3 months. I know peace and love and tranquility. And deep down, I'm angry. Yeah, it's hard to look at, and I am seeing it now and how much it affects your body. And that's part of the reason we get so sick because we're doing all this care for our partner. We're getting nothing in return, and that anger builds and builds and the stress builds and builds, and then we get physically ill. What is fawning? I want to ask you just to be clear on what that is. And also, why do we Cassandras have it? And do we have a specific aspect of us why we're attracted to these guys or why they're attracted to us? I'd like to dig into that a little.
Brilliant question. Yeah, because the fawning response is part of the fight, flight, fear, and fawn. So it's a trauma response. And there's really good research by Pete Walker. It's a really brilliant piece of research he does in his books that make a lot of sense to a lot of Cassandras when they meet it. Because we think we're nice, we've learned to be nice, we're good girls, we're not supposed to be angry, we're not supposed to be shouting, we help. And when we peel it all back, we realize that we couldn't be angry. We were little girls that weren't allowed to be angry. The boys could be angry, but girls couldn't.
Mm.
We couldn't fly away. There was nowhere to go. So you have to stay in the situation you're in. You can freeze. There's a lot of Cassandras that are still in a freeze state when a trauma comes up. It's like, I don't know what to do. There's no thing I can do. What do I do? The next stage of trauma that Cassandra's experienced is, they can't get angry, they can't fly away, they can't freeze. What do? They give out. If they're frightened by mummy or daddy, if they're trying to protect mummy or daddy, what do? They do a fawning response. They make a joke, give somebody something kind. They give something to the other person, but nobody is looking after the wounded, traumatized, hurting child. And because there is a response from mummy, daddy, or teacher, or whoever is the primary carer in that situation, that child realizes, oh, if I act like this, if I'm funny, if I give this, if I'm kind, if I look after, if I parentify, I get the attention. That's very sensible of me. Very, very advanced thinking for young children, but it works for them.
Right. Right.
And the pattern that we then progress and we become the carers. It's absolutely amazing, Diana, when you look at the amount of Cassandras that are special educational needs teachers, nurses, therapists in the caring professions. We learn to fawn and we become so good at it. We take it into our professional aspect. It is a female side of nurturing. I get that. I understand that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
this isn't just nurturing, it's fawning. So it's actually giving something to somebody else at a cost for us.
Right.
And but we are angry, and it's
Right.
like things happening. I'm angry, I'm scared, I'm traumatized. I don't have a voice for that. So if I make it okay for you, then I can be okay. It's
Right.
one, but
For me, I was an only child and I was working on a skit for my mom because Mother's Day is coming up. And I started thinking of her and I thought she was so great. But I
yeah,
realized some things now as I'm finally really, and I thought I've been working on myself for years. I'm fine.
yeah. No,
Not at all. But I've
not
been seeing how I'm 55 and I see how my mom, there was actually a little bit of neglect or there was a little bit of, I had to be her mini me kind of thing. And I'm realizing wow, I was pleasing my mom all the time. My mom was actually kind of loving, but she was always the caregiver of her family and she was angry. So then it just trickles down
one of
and
the
it's
things
insidious. Just,
One of the things I do in clinic is usually at the beginning, I say, bring along your medications, bring along the things, bring along a
yeah.
family tree. And they go, oh. So they're actually saying, right, okay, so this is you, this is your partner, this is your children, this is your parents, this is your grandparents, and we can see very often the autistic side. And I'm going to use a phrase, it's a phrase that a lot of people don't like, but I'm going to wrap it up in codependency.
Oh,
So we can see that mirroring in the family. So we can unpick, why we've learned these traits, why we believe the systems we believe. And on to your next bit of question, why we pick them.
I know. Oh, I hate this one, but yes, why we pick them.
Yeah, because we fall in love with one side of them when they do
Uh,
become the wolf from the sheep, and we fall in love with the sheep, and
yes.
we meet the wolf and we go, how did this happen?
Yeah.
So there will be something that we miss as, we'll call it a red flag. We,
I had so many red flags, and I talked about my first date with him and how he didn't walk me to the car and he left because his ex-girlfriend wanted to see him. And why did he tell me that? And there were so many red flags in the first 10 minutes, and I didn't see it. And I kept saying how that's just not what people are like. It's just that can't be real what he's doing. Why would I not see that? Is that a part of the fawning where we've seen?
the Fawning, because you've convinced yourself in your mind, that, oh, he's got something important to do over there, and you're a kind person. So, it's an ex-girlfriend. So, you're not a jealous type. So, you'll allow him
Yep,
that instead of going, excuse me, where are you for
right.
this?
Oh, that's so frustrating. That's so true. So do you feel that Do you, because I've tried to always say there's so many women from all different walks of life that do get it, these guys,
Yeah.
but can you say there's one common denominator, or do some of the men just wear the mask that well? Whereas we're just kind of duped. Like,
No, I know relationships where the autistic partner does not create a trauma and a toxic environment, and the partner accommodates the autistic traits, and it works well. It's the dance that's okay. The Cassandras are in the dance where it's not okay.
so
Uh,
that's the
and, it,
specific part of it. Yeah.
and it's not just us being too needy, expecting more. We're the ones that try to the nth degree to make it work, to twist yourself into a pretzel, as they say. We're not quitters, but it's only when we have tried 101,000 ways to try and make this work. If I
Right.
say it in a different tone, if I write it down, if I do all the aspects of trying, get to a point where it's
Yeah.
impossible.
Just do this. If I just do that, if I just get this second home, if I just live separately from him, it'll be, that's what I'm at right now. It'll be okay if I,
When we
and
do this,
I know better, but I'm just,
yeah.
you know, I know I need to live separately and we'll see what happens next. But you have to go on this journey. Once you do really find out, there was someone who said, you live well or you leave well the best you can. And I thought, well, how do I leave well with this person? Because nobody understands on the outside. So that's a problem. But to live well, I have been able to say, okay, I'm at this age. And I remember, I think it was from your interview with April Anderson, and you said how a lot of them can't leave because either physical problems or disabilities or the children too. And for me, I have a hard time like working a full-time job. I have chronic pain. And people always tell me, well, once you leave him, the chronic pain will go away. But no, I've had it before him, and who knows, working on myself so much, maybe it will get better. But I have decided to just live separately with him
A
and
lot.
see how that works. And he's not vicious, he's not, doesn't have the horrible meltdowns. He really is very distant, because I know some of them will track you or try to figure out where you are, or that more darker side. He doesn't do that, so I feel like it'll work. So you kind of, we're not alone, because there's so many of us Cassandras out there that can support each other. But in our journey with our guy, we have to figure it out ourselves.
That's where you can be successful together at this point in the relationship, where you're looking after your space, your needs, your
Yes, right.
finances, and you're blending with him at the level that is okay for both of you. So if you're at that point and it works for both of you, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
Will it work for you in the future? Who knows? Who
right,
knows?
right. You
Yeah.
take it just kind of one day at a time.
Yes.
Right. And so you do have the meetup groups. You still have the meetup groups in the UK, which
We
is
do.
wonderful.
Because if I'm traveling somewhere, I can
Okay.
sort of, anybody free in this part of the country, anybody available at this time? It might mean that I'll sort of say, well, anybody close to me if I've got space at a certain day. But we also encourage different areas of the country. We have part of the Facebook group, we have the meetup group chats. So if people are in Scotland or way down south that probably don't get to very often, then if there's somebody in that area, they can arrange their meetups themselves, which
Okay.
is usually okay once they've actually met. A lot of the meetups, we don't even know what they look like. We keep that anonymity in the group sometimes. So why, if I'm meeting up, I will say, where we're meeting, usually at somewhere that's safe,
Hmm.
uh, private, but also makes out that it's a public area. So if you have got a stalker partner, we usually meet up at garden centres so that you can make an excuse as to why you're there rather
Oh,
than at some other place.
yeah.
And I have a vase of magnolias on the table. So if you see the vase of magnolias, that's the Cassandra meetups.
How wonderful.
I
And
totally
Magnolias represent, I remember you said it represents friendship. What is magnolia?
Female support and friendship.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I have. Yeah, so they might not know what we look like, but if the magnolias are there, then
Yeah, yeah. And it's so good to meet in person if you can. The experiences I've had of meeting other Cassandras in person are just, we just hug, and to meet them in person, it is something else. I'm just so glad you're doing that as much as you can. And in the States, I'm in Southern California, and there's just really nothing. And I'm just hoping it keeps growing, that we can find each other and get together, because we need that support.
one word of warning, when you do meet up, give
Okay.
yourself plenty of time, because we can meet up by 10 o'clock in the morning, and at 4 o'clock, we are still chatting and laughing.
Yes. Yes. Because, like you said, we need to talk about it. We need to get it through our system, so then we can start healing and finding somebody that gets it. It's magical when you talk. I got goosebumps when you talk to Cassandra and they're nodding their head instead of saying, "Oh, he's just being a guy."
Exactly. Oh, it's just a guy thing. And you're thinking, no, it's not.
Oh, and then we get more anger and just, oh, leave me alone. Yeah.
The
Huh?
other thing is, Cassandra's a lot, is when you're out and you see couples talking, touching, being supported, and it's just like, oh, God, that's what a healthy relationship looks like.
I know. I find myself envious of healthy couples, and because I have kind of decided to stay with him, and I still think, oh, it would be nice. But I'm glad you brought that up, because even being so entrenched with him for so long and not used to that reciprocity and talking back and forth, I've had times when I finally go out, and when I was away from him for a little while and I went out in public or just go to a restaurant or something and talk to somebody, I was nervous that they were looking at me
Right.
because
Yeah.
I wasn't used to it. That's how isolated I was for
Oh,
so long, and realizing that,
from my experience, when
oh,
I was worse with my husband, if I did go and see friends or meet people or family members, if there was anybody that said, hello, Deb, or gave me something, I had the most massive panic attacks. If somebody was nice to me, I couldn't cope with it.
that's
Yes, it was that extreme.
what we go through.
I understand when people say
Yeah,
that they
yeah,
feel the bad behavior, not the kind behavior. We're the ones
yeah,
with kindness. So
yeah.
the imbalance is massive.
And the hardest part being a Cassandra is that dark side,
Mhm.
right? That when you mention autism to somebody, it just doesn't click that there could be anything but this loving person who's quirky or who's really intelligent. And how do you, because I'm grappling on it, especially when I'm trying to find a house or I'm trying to talk to a realtor, I have to tell her why it's so weird that I have to have all the numbers in place and I have to have everything all lined up before I present it to him. How do you go out in the world and not say anything, but say enough where you're not oversharing,
But you see,
but
that's where you're fawning. You're trying to get the other person to understand, yes, rather than you sort of going, I have difficulty with this. So, if you can help me with it, rather than having to do the big explanation. Because, boy, if you're divorcing, if you're buying the house, the other professionals get to see their behavior.
so I'm still fawning when I do that. That is so frustrating to hear that.
So, it makes us look slightly crazy because we're trying to
Yes.
do lots of work and we speak very quickly and we've only got a short space of time now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain it to you, and you've got to understand how do you explain high functioning autism in a few seconds to somebody who doesn't understand it.
Oh my gosh.
If they have a problem with it, they will have a problem with it, and you can help them with it along the way, maybe. Don't overwork it, don't over explain it. It will work for you very often.
Right,
So,
right. I do need to hear that.
no, when I was divorcing, we were sort of slightly into the divorce and it was all becoming problematic. So for my solicitor, I just wrote a little report about autism and high functioning, and these are his conditions and everything, and just said, you you might find this interesting to read, and you could sort of go, now I get it.
Write it down is a good idea, and not just put it into the whole thing.
Because we want other people to understand, yes, and it very much looks as though we need you to know this, that because I'm protecting you, because I need you to work for me, and
yes, and I just had an experience with the first realtor that I had, and she actually knew she had family members that have autism and all of that, and I said how first I wanted to buy a home, then I wanted to rent a home, and she called me. She said, "Are you sure you're not the one with autism?" And I just went,
yeah.
"Oh no."
Well, I tell you what, one of the things I do check out, because I know a lot of Cassandras that when they're at the height of their Cassandra, they get diagnosed with ADHD. But funny enough, when they're divorced, there's no sign of ADHD. I'm not saying that everybody's misdiagnosed, of course, but a lot of the time we can look pretty ADHD-ish. So yeah.
And I think when I left him for a while, and now coming back here trying to get things to work again, I've turned into that crazy person again because I see it so well. I know I have to get away because we don't see it until we get away a lot of the times, right? Do you agree?
So many of the Cassandras that I've worked with through the divorces, they're the other side, and you see them blossom, Diana. You see them laughing, you see them doing things. Sometimes they need a lot of time to recover to begin with.
Yes.
It's not unusual to have that dormant phase where they're and need to bring themselves back. But once they're out of that and they're living their full life, whatever that is, because as Cassandras, we're completely crushed. We don't know who we are. So to try and find ourselves again, it isn't easy. Really isn't easy.
What kind of hope do we give for those that can't leave, that really cannot, due to disability, due to children, due to...
What I usually say is you get your support team around you. If you need an advocate for your partner from autism support groups, if you need solicitor support so that you've got a safeguarding plan in place, if you've got other family members, other people, you make sure you've got that strong support group, because while we're able and we're capable, we can do it on our own. But if we go under, it all falls apart. So have that backup in whatever way.
And legal backup, right? And who's going to take care of you? Who's going to take care of the children? Who?
Financial and medical. So there's a lot of times the women sort of say, "Oh, well, he's old now. It's I know he's autistic. It's no point in a diagnosis." Whereas actually, for safeguarding you long term in your old age, maybe you do need that diagnosis, or at least the medical profession to recognise it, to safeguard you at some point.
Is there a way that someone, if he is absolutely not wanting to get diagnosed or anything, is there a way? Because I have a personal therapist who did diagnose him just by talking about it, mainly. She just knows from all the traits. That's what it is. I've had it 3 different therapists now say, well, he's absolutely autistic. And the alexithymia is kind of there. Would it also work to have a therapist that understands, even if he doesn't get officially diagnosed? Can it help in a legal way at all?
It'll help you because you've got the support of people understanding and believing. If he's not prepared to get a diagnosis, there's nothing you can do. He's an adult and he has to take that himself.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay.
It's a big subject, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Oh my gosh. Oh, well, thank you. Boy, you've helped me through this too. I'll just gotta calm down with the realtors.
Yeah.
I even watch myself doing it. And it's like, what are you doing? Don't do this.
When we're in the middle of it, it's almost like, can I just delete my last few sentences and stop and go?
I know.
Press and re-record.
Yeah. And it's hard. Like sometimes, even when you see like emails, you can control emails.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll just get up and drink a cup of tea or something. Just don't respond yet. Just
Exactly.
stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we kind of have to work on that because getting things done and being a Cassandra is going to be hard. And we have to kind of check in with ourselves and know that, yes, we are going to have to do the heavy lifting. We are going to have to do a lot of the work. And to just acknowledge that's how it is, because a lot of us don't want to do that.
We do react rather than respond because we have
Yes.
to think quickly because of the situations we're in with
Yeah.
our partners. But yeah, just having that cup of tea and then responding is just gives us that little
Yeah.
breather. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to leave your information below for the UK group. Anybody that's in the UK. Is there anything else you want to say before we close? Any leaving remarks?
One of the things that I always, always, always say to my Cassandras is because we're so good at looking after other people, we're less good at looking after ourselves. So my always lasting piece of advice is self-care is not selfish.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yep. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Lovely to talk. We all need to support each other.
If you found this helpful, I know I sure did. Deborah Lawrence is amazing. Hit that subscribe button. Also, give a like. And if you hit the bell, you can get more notifications for interviews that I will be doing with more Cassandra sisters, wonderful sisters just like Deborah. And also, I will leave a description of the resources that Deborah gave us today down below. So, like Deborah said, self care, take good care of yourself.